Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's 12:30 on a weekday, which means the Acsom Bulletin is once again upon us. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm delighted on this Wednesday afternoon to be joined by John Yogi Hughes and Patrick Paddy McGilp. It's an absolute joy to see the pair of you here, and we are going to indulge for the next hour in a retrospective on the football career of Saeed Hakšabanović. Patrick, you'll be devastated that he's on his way out.
Gutted. I sort of held out some hope when he first signed. I thought he looked quite good in the ball. He played well up until a point. I think it was in the League Cup final against Rangers last season, but I think he missed 3 or 4 pretty good chances. Does the exact same thing in the semi-final a few months later, and he's never really kicked on. He's looked a bit slow for me. I always thought he was a sort of midfielder, an attacking midfield player, as opposed to a winger. He's got great skill. He scored a couple of goals, but just not Celtic quality for me. And maybe I'm a bit of a Celtic guy myself when it comes to things like this. But when you're flashing the gold grill on your teeth and you can't actually get on the subs bench for Celtic or Stoke, that's a sign of a bad attitude for me. He's got his head in the wrong place. So not a great loss to me. Hopefully we can recoup some of that money.
The thing is, when we're talking about grills, John, I have no idea what Patrick is talking about. I'm normally talking square sausage when I'm looking at grills. What on earth is he on about with grills?
Yeah, no, I actually had to check that the first time I heard it as well. Yeah, the ridiculous teeth. That's the thing about Hakšabanović, though. He was such a disappointment ultimately because he promised so much when he came in, and then we spent the whole season going, right, well, he's actually he actually profiles as a number 10. He's not a winger. He's far too slow to be a winger, and he's got great skill. But that's not the way we play. So we weren't playing with number 10, and we showed no inclination to change that. And, obviously the manager didn't fancy him. And it was just really disappointing. He had great flashes in games. He showed great skill at points, but then he never affected the outcome of anything. I think maybe one game.
Big Yogi has had issues with his connection this morning, Patrick. He told us that before he came on. I don't know if this is just an overload of emotion over the loss of Saeed Hakšabanović. I'm not sure. Here he comes back. He's back. I think when we look back on Hakšabanovic's career, John, you're right. It was always you were just waiting for it to happen. You could see that he had talent and he couldn't get a run of games together. When he did get that little bit of consistency, won the Player of the Month award, I think it was in the November after he'd signed for Celtic.
That's the problem, though, isn't it? But that's the problem with guys like that. If you've got an attitude to start off with, it sucks. This is why only players with elite attitudes make it as well as elite skills. Because he's been told since he was a boy he was a great talent. It's very clear that he did have great talent. Did he apply himself to improve that? No, it didn't look like he was applying himself at all. It looked like it was all substance. All style and no substance. And I hate seeing that. I would rather a player come along and he was like an honest trier and maybe not just good enough. But I hate seeing people who have got like essentially a God-given talent and they just don't appreciate it enough to apply themselves. It's like having a 1 in 10 chance of winning the lottery. You're in it. You're in the draw. You've already got half the numbers, and you're going to withdraw now. It's just madness to me how someone like that can squander talent. But at a lower level, we've all known people that have done that over the years, people who are immensely talented at a younger age, but they might never have made it anyway just by natural attrition. When you're at that level, he didn't have to do much to be great. I don't think he had to, he could have done so much more, and it's just really, really disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We have all been in contract or played alongside guys that had a natural ability, John, and not all of them worked hard enough to make sure that it came to fruition. Hakšabanović made his professional debut aged 15. something of a prodigy over in Sweden. I think we looked at the situation that Ruben Kazan were in at the time, Patrick, and thought, you know what, if we get this guy for 1.8, because he had moved there for the best part of 5 million quid, not too long before we signed him. If we get him for 1.8, we can do a quick bit of business and make a wee profit on him. We're now looking, of course, to probably make our money back. 1.8, I think, 1.7 we signed him for. And then just put that into the pot, the sizable pot of transfer funds that we're going to be having. But it's a disappointment. And I think that what I'll always look back on is when Kevin McCluskey compared him to Berbatov. And I'll always remember that. Hakšabanović and Berbatov in the same sentence. Kevin McCluskey, if you're listening, I'm really sorry, mate, but that deserves a wee dig every now and again. But if we're talking about footballers that you played with, lads, I need to share this with you, right? Played football with a guy, and he won't be watching because he's a Hibs fan, but his name is Alexander Finlayson, right? And we went to the same school, Sacred Heart Primary School in Pennycook, and we played in the team, and he was brilliant. He was a goal scorer. He was a phenomenal player. He signs for Swindon when he leaves the high school, and that was when Steve McMahon was the manager, the former Liverpool and England midfield player. Bit of a hard man, I think, John, Steve McMahon.
Yeah.
And Alex was just a young guy, obviously from kind of Midlothian, wide as the Clyde, probably still is. No offence, Alex, but I think it's actually a virtue at times. And he got loaned out. He got loaned out to a team called Barrytown. And the big selling point, Barrytown came to him and said, listen, I know it's a big step down, but we always win the Welsh Cup, which means we're always in Europe. So we'll give you a chance at European football, European Cup Winners' Cup football, right? So he signs for them, and they draw, true to their word, they draw a team called Dynamo Kiev, right? And they play them away from home, and the scoreline read, and I'm looking at it here, Dynamo Kiev 8, Barrytown 0. And Alex Finlayson, who I went to school with, shared a pitch with some guy called Sergei Rebrov, who scored 4 goals that night, and Andrei Shevchenko, who scored a few as well. So there you go, Alex. I think he became a Haddington legend, and probably would have applied himself a wee bit more than Said Hakšabanović.
But I mean, I love those stories as well, because you know, the majority of people, the vast majority, like 99% of people, don't make it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so to have that experience, and yeah, you know, you're pumped 8-0, but you're playing against legendary players, absolutely legendary players, and you know, as nowhere near that level yourself. And God, what a memory that is to have.
It's incredible.
You know, maybe it wasn't all good, but still, you know, it was. You know, you don't know if maybe they were giving him a bit. You know, you could get that as well. They were giving him a bit of chat on the night as well, and he was raging. You know, you just don't know. But you know, it's a fantastic thing to have, and there's lots of people will have stories similar to that. You know, the peak of my career. You know, I mean, you know, the best I ever played a game of rugby even was a heavy defeat. I still remember I played a blinder, but we got absolutely slaughtered. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and that's just the way. And but my dad was watching, and he wasn't exactly familiar with the ins and outs of rugby and who's having a good game or not having a good game. So I think he was just, afterwards, he was just like, oh, well done. You know, patting the head, you know, you tried your best, you know, kind of like, oh, here you go. But then again, yeah, no, it was great to have him there. That was another highlight of that, because we were in the Highlands and we very rarely get down. So it was Glasgow or Edinburgh, it was. So it was good to have him through. But I mean, everyone's got a wee story, like a highlight of your highlight of your career doesn't need to have been a victory. It just needs to have been, you know, something that was important. Maybe your parents turned up to a game.
Yeah,
you know, it was important. A cup final, like school's cup final, you know, it doesn't matter what it was like, but it's brilliant. We've all got them, and that's what I think, you know, qualifies us all as experts now. You know, the fact that we got beat badly by a village team, you know, in the you know, when we were playing at school, but we managed to pick up a girl at the end of the game, you know, so that sort of way. So.
The thing is, well, John, I always find it funny where you're talking to people when they're going about their football career and it was ended by some suspicious injury. If it hadn't been for that dodgy elbow, Patrick, they'd have made it. How many people have you spoken to? You're thinking, mate, it was a lack of ability was the reason you didn't make it. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. By the way, I've got to say, one of the names that pops up on a regular basis on the comments section was called yesterday during the filming of This Is Acsom episode 5. And the special guest was none other than Super Joe Miller. And we made a wee phone call to one of Acsom's constant features of the comments section. And lo and behold, he figured out who it was. I'm not going to tell you who we phoned yet. They know. They might want to say so in the comments section. All will be revealed on Friday night. Now, with regards to Hakšabanović, one final point on him is the way that Brendan Rodgers deals with that type of player. And what I mean by that type of player, Patrick, is someone maybe who thinks it is all about the grills and the peroxide hair and the sleeve tattoos and all that. It's a wee bit more style over substance. He's basically just punted him. You know what I mean? He's sent him to Coventry, basically. That's what he's done, even though he ended up at Stoke. And the same thing happened to Bernabe. Bernabe didn't try a leg to win the ball against Kilmarnock. We lost a 93rd minute equaliser, you remember. Didn't seem all that concerned about it. Next thing you know, we'll fly you over to Brazil and you can sit on a bench over there, mate. I actually quite like that side of Brendan Rodgers, Patrick, where he's not going to take any of that kind of nonsense from anybody.
Yeah, and he done it when he first came in as well, if you remember. You had that sort of clique under Ronnie of Brown, Mulgrew, Stokes and Commons. Stokes, he obviously finished very well at Hibs in that Hibs Cup final. I'm sure we all remember that Hibs Cup final. It was oddly memorable. I think he scored 2 that day. So he had a good finish and, he was hoping to come back to Celtic, but, Brendan just get rid of him straight away because he was... I mean, we've seen since he sort of stopped playing football, this sort of, what he's got up to. But Brendan just didn't want him in the dressing room at all. Brown obviously became a reformed character. He was Brendan's man in the dressing room. Sat down with him for lunch, led the way, first into training every single day. Commons, I don't think Commons went out on loan under Dial. I think he was injured, but nowhere near the squad. Didn't make an appearance under Rodgers, and then sent out to Hibs for 6 months. And I think that was the last time he played football. Those 6 months under Lenny at Hibs, and Mulgrew as well. I think he's certainly visited. I don't know if he's got a job at Lennoxtown, but he certainly visited for sessions under Brendan. So maybe they've reconnected now. But he's another one that never got a new deal. Famously walked off the pitch against Ajax with 5 minutes to go and refused to keep playing because he was injured. So, he's done it before. He's been ruthless. We've all seen the Sterling video from 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. Say steady to me again, you'll be the first plane back. So he's got that ruthless streak in him when he needs it. We heard that St Johnstone back in December, angriest he's ever been. He still sounded angry at full time. You've seen the passion away to Hibs beginning of February this year when he was celebrating with the fans. So he's got it in him, and you need something like that because I think rookie coaches might not know when to use their emotion, whereas an experienced coach like Rodgers, who's been in the game, he's been a manager for 15, 16 years now, he knows when to use his emotion. So it's a good asset to have, and I'm glad he's using it to get rid of guys who I think we're all in agreement their time's up. Bernabe, no place in the squad. Hakšabanović, no place in the squad. Thinking back, I think Hakšabanović was one we were actually more excited about and was more of a success because he came in with Abelgard on loan. And obviously everyone was sort of pillaging the Russian league at that point because of the ban. And Abelgard, came in highly rated as well, but rarely got a game. And when he did, he looked absolutely rotten. So he actually came in with very high praise, Hakšabanović. And it's, as John and yourself have pointed out, you might have the ability, but if you don't apply yourself and your head's, elsewhere, it's not going to work out.
Don't you think there's a strange thing in football, and I think it really is only football, that at a lower level you can't afford to get rid of players because you could lose, vital games and all the rest of it. You have to pander to them. At the level that we're at, you can afford to be tough with guys, because yes, there's big prizes at stake, but the kind of players that we are signing aren't going to be the be-all and end-all. And then that changes again. You get up to the top of the Premier League and all the rest of it, and then the players have the whip hand again. You know what I mean? So, you can't afford to, discipline guys that cost 100 million, 150 million and have them sitting in the huff. And then a players' revolt starts, and that's you out the door because the board of directors are looking at billions of pounds being spent on transfers.
So just look at the way PSG have dealt with Mbappe. I mean, he was pulling their strings for years.
Yeah,
and now he's just upped and left for nothing, I think.
Yeah. No, he's as I said before, he's going to have to struggle through in 752 grand a week, the boy. So, it's a nightmare for him. But the image rights, the percentage of image rights should keep him out the homeless shelter. But yeah, I mean, that's it. You lose all power again as a manager because effectively you're just a coach. And if one of these prima donnas turns against you, because there are plenty of them at that elite level whose attitude to training is good, but his attitude to everything else is dreadful. As we've seen before, people are just bad people. We've got cat kickers and the like, and people with terrible personalities. So, they might have an elite mentality when it comes to training, but they might just be absolutely dreadful human beings. And there's not a lot, if you're signing them for that sort of money, and there's so much money on the line, there's billions of pounds in prize money on the line. It's difficult to see how you could even expect a manager to maintain some sort of strict discipline there. What are you going to do? You're going to drop them? What's the ultimate sanction there? The ultimate sanction is you get them out the door. But even this, this is beyond the days of Alex Ferguson now. It's not as easy done. And very few people have as much cachet as Ferguson did and as much in the bank with the board as he did, that they would let someone do stuff like that. But you just don't see it anymore nowadays. You would have thought Mourinho would have been like that, but even I don't think he's ruthless with players the way that Ferguson was.
Yeah, this was always my concern, that we got to a point, and we're probably well beyond it at the elite level, where the player power absolutely, is too strong for a manager like the manager that John mentioned there, the Alex Ferguson style, where it would be the hairdryer treatment and, you're getting relegated to train with the kids and all that kind of stuff, Patrick. They just shut up shop, draw their wages and get a big transfer at the end of it. And it just feels as though the players are in the greatest level of power when it comes to a football club. So I like to see, when necessary, someone like Brendan Rodgers at this club, when we've got a bloated squad and these guys aren't contributing. And when they were given, we did put their trust in them, like Bernabeu last season against Kilmarnock, and they'll let you down. It's like 5 minutes to go in a big game where you've got to win. John's mentioned a couple of games, pivotal moments where Hakšabanović could have put the game to bed and he didn't. You've got to have that trust in a player. And I think the mentality, which we constantly go on about, so much so it almost becomes cliched, but this is what we're talking about. If you don't have the mentality to play in Brendan's team, he's going to move you on. So what we're talking now, Hakšabanović, originally the price that was being quoted was 1.8. Was 4.2. And of course, Benjamin Siegrist has announced he's not coming back because he's going to Australia. So we start to then look at this squad and say, right, well, there's 3 players. We've already lost Joe Hart, Paulo Bernardo and Adam Ida are not yet Celtic players. So we're 6 down on the size of squad, Patrick. Nobody has come in yet. Sajid Hakšabanović leaves Celtic having played 42 games, 5 goals and 4 assists. And we are awaiting, I think it's imminent that he is going to be leaving for Genk in Belgium. Came in, I think there was a lot of thought of him. Hakšabanović still only 25, just turned 25, by the way, which shows you he's been around for a long time. And has played a similar amount of games, 47 games for Celtic, 12 goals, no assists. But because of the non-contributing status, Patrick, we're not going to miss these guys.
No, I mean, the only moment from this season was that St Mirren game, a couple of days after Atletico Madrid. 83rd minute, I think he scored to put us 2-1 up. That's the only moment that's, it felt pivotal at the time. When you look at the final points tally, it wouldn't have been, but that was probably quite a big goal. But apart from that, hasn't done anything of significance this season. I thought he was an all right player. It's again the potential thing. He showed a lot of potential, but at our level in our games, you need to be winning every week. And then when you go into Europe, it's about one or two moments. So it's about when do you bring these guys on? When do you play these guys who have bags of potential? So not that gutted about losing him, especially for the fee that we're commanding. But thought he was a decent enough player. But as you say, there's 6 guys there that you've mentioned. I don't know if Bernabe was one of them. I personally have accepted losing Matt O'Reilly as well. And then you've got to look at Gustav Lagerbielke. So there's quite a lot of guys going out the door in all likelihood. So it shows that we need to, as you say, you're adding 1.8 million to the pot, you're adding 4.2 million to the pot. You're freeing up a bit of wages with all these guys going. So you've got the money there to go and recruit. And, now that teams are going out of the Euros, and, this weekend, the round of 16 starts, so you'll have even more players. Maybe they'll take 7-10 days holiday. And then I'd like to think you should see guys coming in the door, sort of first week, second week of July. I'd like to see us sign quite a number of players. But as you say, all these guys going out. I mean, Siegrist, I think you pointed out he's only played 2 games for Celtic.
Yeah.
Bernabe, obviously, he's played a couple of games, but he's actually cost us in more games than in what he's contributed, in my opinion. Obviously, we've barely seen him since he did come in, only had one moment. And then Lagerbielke, for whatever reason, wasn't getting a game. So these guys, it's good to just cash in, get the wages, get the transfer fee, move on, and try and upgrade the squad. Now that players are coming back from
I was reading, no, Paul John, that obviously a different source from yourself, that we paid 2.5 million for Hakšabanović, and that we're looking for 3. Which would be nice, but maybe that was in euros, and the translation. But I mean, if you take, there's O and Hakšabanović, even if that is true, that that's the best part of 6 million quid, which is the best part of what you'd pay for either. Now that's I would take that any day as a swap. So a guy who wasn't even at the club basically, and a guy who was third choice at best striker. So could we do that? But I think I'm really not hopeful we're going to be able to keep Ida or get Ida. I think once his manager sees him, I think he's coming to us has really, really boosted his confidence. And that Kilmarnock game was one of the best individual performances I've seen in a long time. And I think he'll be flying now down there, and I find it difficult to believe their manager will just let him go. Especially as he probably doesn't have to. So we'll see what happens, but that would be nice if we could balance the books that way. As we've said all along, get the non-contributors out, get quality players in. Trade all these 4s and 2.5s and 1.5s, and get the 6 and the 7 and the 8. And we don't need to break the bank, clearly, as you pointed out many times, and we have. I mean, the amount to clear out this squad needs, you could be banking a serious amount of money, and you could spend. I mean, I said I wanted to see at least 30 million net being spent, which means you could, in effect, based on how much we're spending on the squad, you could easily be spending 50 million quid gross, but you're taking in so much in transfers, including the likes of Matt O'Reilly. But we could, in this transfer window done correctly, with the money we have, the assets we have to sell, we could transform this squad and this team for a generation. It could be, we could spend unprecedented funds here and do it at a minimal cost. So, let's say 30 million net. Us before, we'd been spending the 30 million gross and looking to break even on the transfers. But if we spend 30 million net, and we've got another 20 or 30 million in there as well, we're still in the money. As Patrick says, Hunter's the money. Patrick, I mean, I don't know what the exact figure is, but I don't think it matters. Patrick has it down as Hunters. So we've definitely got, as I said, Peter will be presenting that to the board in the annual accounts. Lads, we have hunters of money.
Hunters of money. It does. It brings back the old Harry Enfield sketch that's long before your time, Patrick. Loads of money. Now, obviously, there's loads of chat around goalkeeper. Joe Hart was such a massive part of the last 3 seasons of success, and he has gone, as has the third choice, Benji Siegrist, leaving us with just one first-team goalkeeper in Scott Bain, who has now sat on a bench as an unused substitute over 250 times for Celtic. Paul McLean, what goalkeeper? Well, it's hard to try and distinguish the nonsense from anything with substance, Patrick, when it comes to any kind of transfer rumour. And what you tend to do, what I certainly tend to do, is look at the source. And 99.9% of it is just dross, clickbait, newspapers trying to get us through the summer with as many clicks as possible. And every so often you'll get a decent source that you trust, and you think to yourself, they've done their investigative work on each individual story, and when they speak, you tend to believe it. There isn't much out there in terms of targets that you believe in, but when it comes to goalkeeper, Patrick, it is a priority. And I think that, if we were to make that as our first signing, it would be something of a statement, I think, because you're not going to get a great goalkeeper unless you find that unique scenario with Joe Hart, for example, where a guy can come in with all that bag's experience for £1 million. We're not going to do that again, are we? So it looks as though we're going to have to shell out big money on a keeper before we do anything else.
Yeah, it's certainly the priority. I had a quick look there. Joe Hart announced his retirement on Instagram on the 22nd of February, which was 125 days ago. So in 125 days, I'd like to think we've identified 2 or 3 targets, spoken to the clubs, spoken to the agents, and, in theory, we're waiting on them coming back from the Euros, because, they can't still be on their holidays a month later. So I'd like to think that we're just keeping it hush and it's only 2 or 3 weeks away. Obviously, time will tell. We've not got a lot of faith in the current recruitment model or, the current board, because the last 4 windows, 2 years have been quite poor. But it's a priority position. You've seen how important it is over the years. I mean, under Boric, Forster, Gordon to an extent, and then Joe Hart, you've had a solid foundation to build on at the back, and you've seen the club have a lot of success.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you look at Barkas, and not to pick out individuals, but under O'Neill, we didn't have the best of goalkeepers, and it probably cost us in a European final, if we're being totally honest. So having a good goalkeeper is, one of the most important things you can do when it comes to building the squad and building that defence. So it's our number one priority. I know Scales had a poor, 4 or 5 months into the season, but we now don't have a goalkeeper in effect. So I think that is a priority. I wanted Livakovic last summer. I thought he was brilliant at the World Cup. He's obviously had a decent enough Euros. Bit of a penalty specialist, tall, great shot stopper. It never happened back then. I think, could be wrong, but I think Turkish wages are a lot higher than what we are willing to pay. Obviously, we could pay it in theory, but I think McGregor at 35 grand is our highest earner, and to sort of break that, people would be asking for raises and all that. So it's difficult to compete in that sense. I'd heard a rumour a couple of months ago that it was his wife that put a stop on it, that she'd Turkey. That could be nonsense, but it's certainly a possibility. I know Rodgers' wife wasn't too happy in Scotland, and that's why they've. I think
John's laughing. John's got a story about a footballer's wife.
No, I've not got a story. I mean, I just can't understand why you'd want to move from like the holiday capital and the cultural centre that is Istanbul, and the scorching all year round weather. And the magnificent lifestyle and beaches and all the rest. Why wouldn't you want to move to Glasgow? That's insane talk. I would also talk about insane talk. Just point out, last time I was on, Kelleher had been mooted, but what I was disputing was he originally was priced at 20 million apparently, but then all of a sudden it was 10 million, and it was 10 million because everyone knew we wouldn't pay 20 million. So it was reduced by the clickbait experts to 10 million to try and give some legs to the story. And now I see he's been touted for 35 million for a reserve keeper.
That's insane, John.
Crazy
When
money.
you, when you were laughing there, talking about, you know, the good lady being the deciding factor on a move, and it's been, you know, down the ages, it's happened so often. The best example, was it the best that I've ever heard about? Listen to this one, guys, right? So you go back to 1982, and the north of Ireland are in the World Cup in Spain. Martin O'Neill, a certain Martin O'Neill, becomes the first ever Roman Catholic to captain the nation, right? And he does so obviously at the World Cup. They've got a right good side. Slightly before your time, Patrick. I seem to say that an awful lot when you're on. Slightly before your time. And the Billy Bingham was the manager. The assistant manager was Bertie Peacock. Now, Bertie Peacock, of course, had been a great Celt of the 1950s and the early 1960s prior to the return of his ex-teammate Jock's team to revolutionise the club. But Bertie Peacock spoke to Bobby Murdoch, who at that time was the manager of Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough were on basically a run of games which looked as though they were going to get relegated. They needed a wee bit of a pick-me-up. And Bertie Peacock says to him, listen, if we could get George Best to come over from America. George Best, 36 years of age, John, at this point, by the way, right? You know, sipping pina coladas on some beach somewhere. He was in California, actually, been playing with San Jose Earthquakes, I think. Some of the names back then were tremendous. San Jose Earthquakes.
Fantastic.
And he was dating a Miss World at the time, as he did, John, right? So Bertie Peacock had a master plan. We're going to get George Best fit. We're going to send him to Middlesbrough. He's going to play with Bobby Murdoch for 6 months, and then we'll take him to the World Cup. He hadn't kicked the ball for his country in 5 years. Take him to the World Cup, 1982 in Spain. Won't use him all that often, but he's going to be there for his experience. Bring him on for 20, 30 minutes. And they had a great tournament. And George Best was up for it. Bobby Murdoch was up for it. Bertie Peacock was up for it. But George Best's missus, who was a Miss World at the time, Patrick, said, California, Middlesbrough, I'm going to stay put. So George Best never played at a World Cup final because of that. There you go. There's my best story. Rich Harrison, there we go. If we start the league campaign with Bain, Scales and Taylor in the start 11, then it'll be proof that we've made yet another Horlicks of a transfer window. Who remembers Horlicks? 1 point ahead of Sefco is the board's aim. Patrick, am I going to get naive contributor of the year to say that I think it's going to be different?
No, I don't think so. No, it needs to be different. I mean, we cannot. We might go into the first game. You know, that could be entirely possible. You know, it's only. I think it's
9
only
days
5
to the
weeks
first game.
away.
9 days to the first game against Ayr United.
Oh,
Who's
so
who's in goals?
So it is. Aye, that it'll definitely be in that day. He's the only one we've got, I think. I can see Taylor being there. You know, a lot of managers have said. Well, I say a lot. You know, Ange and Brendan have said, you know, how much balance he gives to the team, and you can see it. To be fair, when we've had to play Burnaby or another, you know, we've seen how off balance and how poor we've been. So he does give that balance, Taylor. But my only worry is that there is better out there, and we're just not looking at it because we're happy and we're safe. When it comes to Scales and Bain, you know, certainly with a goalkeeper, we need a new goalkeeper, and almost certainly at centre half. We cannot go into another season with guys like Bain and Scales playing the full year. We need to improve. All that money that we've got, and we do have, you know, tens of millions. Let's not kid ourselves. We do have tens of millions, and you know, we're bringing in transfer fees, we're bringing in season ticket money, we're bringing in Champions League money. You've got to invest that somewhere. Whether it's, you know, Barrafield, the main stand, the academy, the squad, you've got to invest it somewhere. You know, we've obviously got Barrafield going on, but the squad's, you know, where we want to be putting that money. We want to be pushing for that 24th spot in the Champions League. You want to, you know, absolutely nail down that title for a fourth season. And you just want to, as John says, if you're buying these better players, you can compete at a higher level. And it's just about reinvestment at that stage, because if you're buying better players, you've got a much, much better chance of winning that league, especially with the manager that we've got. So to return to that point, I don't think it's naive. You know, we're going to sign a new goalkeeper. That has got to be inevitable. We're almost certainly going to bring in another centre half. I can see Taylor continuing to be in the starting 11, if I'm being honest. I'd like to improve, but, the way that the club's been run the last 20 years, that might be a bit naive to say that we're getting a whole new team.
So I noticed someone in the comments, you're laughing at what I said about spending that amount of money. I'm aware of that. Look, most people will know I'm pretty much the cynic on here, and usually I'm quite realistic about what's going to happen. However, I'm saying this in the full knowledge that projecting our expectations and knowing full well that there's massive glaring areas that need improved, and we've known that before, and accepting the fact that it is the hope that kills you, we have never had this sort of cash before.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the decision going to be? Can they really do what they did even in the last couple of transfer windows? What glaring areas needed to be dealt with and were not? Can they really do that? Is Brendan really going to accept that? I find it difficult to believe that he will. However, he did cover for the board, and we're all responsible for recruitment, and this is the way it works, and all the rest of it, and some good players do. He did his PR job, but I'm torn between these two things, because I know it's the hope that kills. It's how you end up broken-hearted. It's how you end up frustrated and raging for the rest of the season. So it can ruin your season right now because you have hope that things will go differently. But there is reason to be hopeful on this occasion. It is not just based on nothing. It's not just based purely on us projecting what we want to happen and the glaring issues that were within the squad. We can do better. We must do better. That said, that's been true for quite a long time and has not been acted upon. So I don't know. You can choose your poison. You can be a bitter old cynic, or you can be a potentially about to be broken-hearted romantic. But you can choose your poison. At the moment, nothing's happened. I prefer to be hopeful while there's hope. Now, if nothing happens, then I will revert to my bitter old cynic for the rest of the season. But I mean, it's absolutely. I don't know. I don't even want to think about how you would feel with this amount of money in the bank if we do not make an effort in this transfer window. And I mean, make an effort to break transfer records in this transfer window, because it may never come round again. We could set ourselves up here, as I say, for a generation, or we do nothing. We squirrel away the money, and eventually the money runs out. Because guys like that, they're not looking. What the money men like Lowell fail to take into account is the opportunity cost, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can see that by cutting costs and by doing this and increasing prices here, you're going to make a difference to the bottom line. Definitely going to make a difference to the bottom line. But what's the opportunity cost? You've missed this opportunity, this massive opportunity to push the club forward. How much is that going to cost? Because that is not definable. And that's where these guys, I don't think, are great at running football clubs. That's why CEOs need to have vision. They cannot just be the chief financial officer. So that's what we're balancing here. There is a massive opportunity cost, or we can just hold on to this money until eventually it runs out.
And then it's a missed opportunity. The thing there, John, quite a few points there that you raise. You're talking there about a generational decisions made in this summer could actually impact on a generation of success. I truly believe that. We spoke about this a few weeks ago. I think that when you look at where we are right now, you said it, and it's true, we're in a unique financial position. We've never been in more rude financial health than we are sitting here right now in the history of the football club. And that's why you've got to think we can do and we will do things differently. If you don't, there's so many ramifications, one of which would be the gaffer. Brendan Rodgers surely wouldn't stand for this again. A repeat, not only of the first time round, but a repeat of that, what happened last season. That was not ideal. And I just think that there came a point where he basically rolled the sleeves up, got his core group of players and got it over the line. But he won't be willing to do that season after season. And the Celtic fan base won't be either. I mean, obviously yesterday, Patrick, we spoke about another new range of training material. Last week it was a new golf range. Before we know it, having already renewed the season tickets, we're going to be hit with the European package cost. There's always something else in the pipeline coming up, right? And fans, to keep them on side, we cannot just be continually asked to put your hands in your pocket. The club has got to do it. The club have got to put their hands in their pocket. And I think that when you're looking at the situation Celtic are in, this unique financial position, compared to the situation that our main rivals are in, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. Absolutely shambolic situation with the stadium, and who knows where they're going to play their home fixtures, and who knows the truth in relation to the delays and who's getting paid, who's not getting paid, fake delays with steel and all this kind of stuff, right? We've all read the rumours, and I'm pretty sure the truth will not be reported in the mainstream media in the fullness of time. But there is a moment, and this is it. This is it, Patrick. And I was talking yesterday about it. If you take a 35-man squad, cut it down to 25, that gives you the spending power. That gives you the power in terms of giving a bit more in the wages. John made a great point there. You take Hakšabanović and 4.2, 1.8, there or thereabouts, John. Some maybe a wee bit more. That's £6 million plus. So for people saying to me, Bernardo's not worth 6 million. All right, but if you could swap Owen Hakšabanović for Bernardo, would you do it? Because if so, he is worth 6 million. And I think we need to start thinking like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally new environment we're working in. And as you say, if you cut down those numbers, you can boost the sort of bottom line of your wages up a tad. You know, I spoke, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago with Kevin about if you need those 8 homegrown players and you're short, bring some young guys in. You know, we're building this new Barrafield development. We need the Scottish players, and you know, we'd like to think of ourselves as a club that bring through youth players and give youth a chance. Bring these guys in instead of having guys like Abelgard sitting on the bench in European games. Give these young players that opportunity and that chance to learn. So if you've got, you know, that core group of, say, 22 to 25 guys who, yes, they might be in slightly higher wages than what we're paying right now, but you're getting rid of guys like McCarthy and you're having guys like Rocco Vata and Daniel Kelly who are on a youth wage but are getting that experience and are fully part of the squad, and they can graduate after a year or two. That would be a sort of revolutionary way of thinking about how we do things compared to how they are now. And as you say, you know, Rodgers isn't going to stand for this again. He might have wanted to come back to Scotland. He's left his sort of 1 year sabbatical early to come in. You know, him and Lawwell obviously didn't have the greatest working relationship. But we can't do the rinse and repeat because not only is he going to get bored if we don't try and push the boat out and progress and take the club as far as he thinks he can take it in the next 2 years. Fans are going to get bored, and I've spoken about this. You know, when it comes to European football, are we really going to pony up 190, 200 quid for 4 Champions League games to then not compete? Because as much as we like to talk about Champions League money, it's not just a steady stream that's going to come in year on year, regardless of results. We need to compete at that level, at least against, you know, the third and fourth pot teams to try and get to that 24th spot. And then, you know, you make a great point about merchandise. If we are not pushing the boat out with so much money in the bank, why should we hand over even more money? I think it's about 80 quid to buy a football top now. I don't really buy football tops. I've got, you know, 5, 6 Celtic tops. I'll sometimes buy merchandise if it's really nice, but I know guys that, you know, they buy it every year. Christmas presents, birthday presents, folk have kids. You're always going to have guys, and you know, people all over the world know about the hoops, know about Celtic, are fans. They want a bit of merchandise, fair enough. But you know, they die hard, especially in the current economic sort of climate we're living in, the cost of living crisis. You cannot expect fans to keep on buying with higher prices, stagnant wages, and then a stagnant team with so much money in the bank. Now, if they're planning on spending 90 million to redevelop the main stand and turn Celtic Park into 70,000, 75,000 capacity, tell us. There is no harm in making that public knowledge, and that's why we're saving all this money. But if you're saving money and you're not spending it on the squad, folk will become disinterested in certain parts, and you'll end up, as John says, you scrimp it away, and it just diminishes over time because you're not pushing the boat out, you're not speculating to accumulate.
Can I just point out, Paul John, sorry, just as you said that, I had a terrible flashback. So my missus is away for the week, so I might have been sitting myself last night and a wee bit bored, and I've just remembered I have bought that horrible Christmas tree.
Oh, John, you were the one that bought it. Honestly, I seen something
I don't know what I was thinking at the time. It must have been late on in the evening, but I just remembered I bought that Christmas tree jersey and a very nice polo, to be fair. But I shall wear them for amusement when they come through.
I cannot wait, John Hughes, to see that. No, the thing is with the merchandise, I'm interested in brand and how the brand develops, and I think we've said before. Yesterday we were talking about Celtic. Despite all the success, I still regard us as being a sleeping giant. I think we had a very, very good conversation on This Is Acsom a few weeks back with Stephen Craig, who's a very successful CEO of a number of different companies down the line. And he was talking about the fact that we shouldn't really buy this line that, we're a big fish in a small pond and all that. We should be one of the biggest brands on the planet. We could be one of the biggest football clubs on the planet when it comes to global merch, and the fan base is the reason for that. So that's something that I always go back to. It's not because the person in the marketing team has done very, very well to break certain regions. No, the reason that things sell is because the fans are there. So I get it, and I think having a variety of merchandise is fantastic. The club have just announced that the stadium tour is the #1 family attraction in the world. That's tremendous, right? And we all know the mentality of exit through the gift shop. So you've got all these people all year round going on the tour. There's the gift shop. Buy yourself a hoopy teddy and a Christmas jumper, and away you go. There's always going to be that money coming in, Patrick. But last season, I think, was a great example, John, of how quickly the mood can change. Now, honestly, when you look at the loyalty of the Celtic fans, and don't use the word loyal that often when I'm talking about Celtic, the loyalty of the Celtic support, John, but when things are going bad as they were going at a stage last season, it can very quickly turn. And that's when I see a lot of comments coming in saying, I'm not buying this, I'm not buying that. So it's got to be twofold. When things are great, nobody really concerns themselves too much with all that side of things, constant new merchandise. It's when things start going a bit wrong, and I mean 2 or 3 bad results, John, very quickly it can turn, can't it?
Okay, just to go off on a wee tangent. So I had guests.
What else did you buy? What else did you buy?
I had guests over from England for that first England game, and basically I had to work out somewhere to take this fella into town where we wouldn't get murdered for supporting England. And it worked it out. Now, he'd never been here before, and you're trying to you're trying to say, oh, it's not what you think. It's a beautiful place. It's a wonderful part of the world. It's also beautiful. And then at the same time, the place we were going to initially was blocked off because for the first time in many a year, there was a viable pipe bomb parked just outside it, and the place was shut. So my treatise about, listen, everything's great. It's a wonderful part of the world. When there's a bomb disposal robot halfway down the street, it's not that convincing. At least I did say to him after the game that Gareth Southgate can take comfort in the fact that it's not only his players that are bombing. But apart from that, what you were saying there was people get annoyed because we don't build from a position of strength, and therefore we end up in situations like we are now, where instead of an incremental change, we have to make sweeping changes. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very frustrating, mainly because it never pans out. Because we all know we need to get rid of so many guys in the squad just now. It's going to be very, very difficult. We might get rid of half of them, because a lot of them, like the McCarthys of the world, you can't force them out the door. But people are obviously going to then get frustrated. You get rid of half of those guys, you bring in guys that are nowhere near the level you think that we need. And so people's goodwill evaporates quickly. because I think our fans, for the most part, are very reasonable. Because for everyone that says 5 minutes after they've seen a player, he'll never be a player, there's like 20 or 30 guys saying, give the boy a chance. Let's see what he does. Give him a run. And there's people saying that right to the death with a lot of players. People still saying that about Mikey Johnson. You know what I mean? After 8 years.
This is the 8th pre-season that we are going to have that discussion, John.
Yeah,
about
exactly. Mikey. Exactly that. So, yes, obviously people have got, at this stage have built up quite strong opinions about what happens at the club. And that's fair enough. And people will obviously and justifiably, especially this year, justifiably be furious if the board don't do what we need them to do. And it's not just for us. You want to, we don't just want this because we've got some sort of mad ego trip about that, we think we're an important part of, Celtic, or we should be calling the shots. You love the club. You want the club to succeed. That's why you're all here. And it's so frustrating when people don't share that ambition. And that's where it's, we've been lacking that ambition, lacking that vision. And they really, really need to come up trumps this time because there's no excuse. There's literally no excuse. We could break a transfer record 5 times over, right? Easily with the money that we have, and we'd still only spend 20 million net. You know what I mean? So it's I don't believe that the fans turn for no reason. I think our fans, for the most part, are decent, and they're not completely unreasonable. Although if you spend a little long enough on social media, you wouldn't believe that. But we still have our share of lunatics. Let's be fair. But the majority of them, I mean, like Acsom's got a great community. All you need to do is you ban a couple of the lunatics, and you're good to go. So I really think that the fans right now have massive expectations. I think they're right to have massive expectations. I think there's huge pressure on Brendan. I think there's huge pressure on the board, although they've never cared about that before. But, I think there's even pressure in terms of Dermot Desmond. I think, for instance, if we were to go on to have a terrible window and have a poor season, I think you would see, there could be crowds outside again. That because there's no call for it. There's just no call for it. It's not required. I refuse to go down that road. I just did go down that road, but I refuse to think about that for any length of time. I choose right now to remain hopeful, and I think most people are. But the club should be prepared for what happens if you let people down.
John, you're spot on, and I agree with you. It is, for me, a fan base that is very balanced. But we are in a situation right now where we could potentially be going for another 10 in a row. Now, Patrick, people don't like you to look beyond the next game, never mind the next season. But that is how powerful we can become. And a lot of fans don't want just domestic success. But if you do go on a run, what I would like to see this time, that I don't think we did the last time, is to really build on the European aspect of that, and also to build the youth development aspect. I don't think during that 9 in a row period we brought through anywhere near the amount of youth players that we should have done. And also, you remember all the successes with the transfers and the players that we made a lot of money on, of course you do, but we spent a lot of money on dross. And again, the counter argument to that is always, yeah, but it's not an exact science. Absolutely get that, but our hit rate has to be better. So you can be the absolute best, but still improve on the youth development, still improve in Europe, still improve on your recruitment, and become stronger and continually become stronger. Because next season, the one after the one we're about to enter, there's going to be qualifiers due to the coefficient. So why worry about that in a year's time? Why not start planning now and be strong next season so that when you come to the qualifiers the season after, hopefully, you're already in a position of strength so you can get through them and get the bounty again. Because what you don't want to see, Patrick, is a repeat of a scenario where we go into Europe and we're not prepared. We've seen it so many times. First time round with Brendan Rodgers, we played European games with Owen O'Connell playing centre-half, Near Beaton, of course. We even played Kundai Benyu in Europe. We were underprepared for the big European games that, opens the door to the biggest, most lucrative income stream a football club like Celtic can get. And we can't make that mistake again. So we need to start planning now, even for the following season where we're going to have to qualify for Champions League football.
Absolutely. And, those are the seasons that we actually done quite well in Europe that you're quoting, Paul John. Kundai, Benute, O'Connell.
Kundai, Benute.
Where is he now?
Where is he now?
I would be very surprised if he's actually still playing football. But that's one to Google after the podcast, isn't it? No, I mean, I think you look at the first 10 in a row, the 10 in a row that we're all going for in the last decade, and we obviously get 9 titles and then we fall at the final hurdle. But if you actually look at Champions League, we only qualified for the Champions League 4 times. Now, in my opinion, the first 6 was a complete free hit, and we get 4 out of 6. And then, in my opinion, Steven Gerrard isn't the best manager, but he got Rangers relatively organised, and there was a wee bit of a challenge. And obviously, it all falls apart in season number 10. But the first 6, absolute free hit, and you get 4 out of 6 Champions League qualifications. After the John McGinn fiasco, Rodgers falls out with a few guys at the club, we don't qualify until Ange's second season. You know what? We spend, was it 5-6 years out of the Champions League? 4 or 5 seasons. So, we've done 3 titles. We're going to have our 3rd group stage. We've only ever done 3 in a row when it comes to Champions League group stages. We've done it under Strachan, I believe, with 3 group stages. So we've never done 4 in a row when it comes to Champions League qualification. So that has to be the aim. And it was a real missed opportunity, because as much as we're in a totally different financial situation to our rivals at the moment, the gap financially has almost never been bigger. Think about what it could have been had we taken the Champions League more seriously, had we, I don't like to blame Ronnie Dyler, but that was the first season we never qualified in that 10 in a row run. And you look at the teams we played, Maribor, Malmo, Legia Warsaw, Molde, that was a group stage game, but we have not taken Europe seriously for so long now, and the financial gap could be so much larger. Even if you did just squirrel it away, as John said 10, 15 minutes ago, we could still be absolutely loaded, even more so than what we are now. So the aim for me, anyway, is to win the league to get us into the Champions League. So as you say, I think it's just a playoff game we've got next season, and that'll be a difficult game, assuming we win the league.
I think there's a definite
if we prepare. If we prepare this summer, then you've got the league. From the financial advantage that we have, I think the league the next year or two, we should be massive favourites. Again, you go into the playoff next season, you've got another chance to qualify for even more money. But if you prepare this summer, the next year or two, we could be absolutely cruising it financially and cruising it in the league, or we should do anyway, with the amount of money that we have. So 10 Champions League qualifications in a row, that's my 10 in a row. That's what I'm going for.
Oh,
that's a brilliant one. Yeah, what about though? I mean, and this is what people have been worried about, and I think you were maybe speaking about this in an earlier pod, Paul John. The definite danger of some sort of the major implosion or the mini implosion on the other side of the city, and then our guys just sit and think that 100 million will do us 10, 15 years, and they don't. We never fire a shot in anger. Now, there's some great comments made about it yesterday, and I definitely don't want to steal any jokes. But Lawrence had made a couple of good points. But that's I think it's sack the board time if it turns out then that they are taking a struggling Rangers as a benchmark, because they're not the benchmark. They haven't been our benchmark for years at this point, and they certainly shouldn't be. Yes, we have to pay attention. If they suddenly were bought over and someone's piling money into them for, because they don't understand how money works and how business works, and but if someone eventually did that, yeah, you have to pay attention because they're buying good players, all the rest of it. But they shouldn't be anywhere near us. And that's why last year was a disgrace. And I don't know, we said that many times. Absolute disgrace. Rangers were garbage. And we were only marginally better than them. They were absolutely dreadful. And it was It's poorer two teams as I've seen in a long time. And that cannot be allowed to happen ever again. There's too much at stake. We've got too much money. The Champions League is worth too much. We need to be built for the Champions League qualifications at least, full stop. We need to be putting out a team that can win 1 or 2 games in the Champions League. Right? Because there's plenty of teams that we could play in the Champions League who we could beat, as we proved last year. Proved last year with a weak side. So, I mean, I really think that any sort of regressive step, or we're looking at Rangers as if there's some sort of threat that we need to be worried about, we cannot accept that.
No, we cannot. And I've got to say, 1,500 live on the stream today. It's pre-season. We haven't signed a single player. We haven't kicked the ball. We're still 1,500 of us talking about Celtic. We'll be doing it every single day throughout the summer months. Absolutely no stopping us. Davey Boy, Macaulay, thanks for supporting Acsom and what we do. Hail, hail, comrades. I'm digging the Friday night shows. Keep them coming. Well, yesterday we recorded the latest one, Davey, and it was with Joe Miller. I've got a good old list of ex-players and Celtic-minded individuals who'll be coming onto the show. And it's a cracker. Wee Joe. Just cracking career, brilliant career. By
the way, can I just say, Paul John, it is a great. Those shows are great. I mean, the production quality and the things that you're doing to try and progress this, this channel, and the quality of stuff that you're producing is absolutely fantastic. I mean, this is the least professional thing that you do, but I am available, as I say, for future ones like that. If you're looking for some eye candy, I'm happy to be objectified.
That, John, by the way, when you're talking about that, it's great that we're able to bring in the Acsom contributors when available onto the new show. But it's great fun. And when I talk to players, I'm just, I'm like a sponge. I want to know as much as possible. But to learn from Joe Miller, and I'm not going to spoil it, just watch it on Friday night, but he made his reserve team debut for Aberdeen aged 14. 14. And he was still playing football when Clyde beat us in the Scottish Cup in Roy Keane's debut, because he was playing for Clyde. He came on as a sub, 37 years of age. And he's still wee Joe when you talk to him. Absolutely brilliant. Looking forward to that on Friday night. Everybody that's coming out on Thursday night, tomorrow night, to see us with Tomo, Petrov and Jackie, come along and say hello. Looking forward to that. There's 300 people going to be in that room at Bad. It'll be a right good laugh. I'm pretty sure of that as well. So thanks everybody for continuing to support what we do. And all that's left for me to say, Patrick McGilpin, John Yogi Hughes, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail.